Hi everyone, it's Friday and it's been a tumultuous week to say the least. I think people could do with a good weekend with all the crap that's been happening in Australia. Well, I use the term Australia, but really it's not Australia at the moment, it's a number of colonies and with some major exceptions, the big one of course being Victoria. And there's more bad news coming from Victoria today. They've extended the moratorium on evictions and rental increases up until the 26th of March next year. Now, this legislation supposedly in the interests of both renters and landlords, but don't believe it. We're talking a Labor government here, and basically, I'm not a landlord at the moment, but I can tell you right now that it is definitely in the favour of tenants. So it's going to be impossible virtually to evict a tenant. And what I think will happen is there'll be a collapse in the private rental market. I think people will just get out in droves. I think what you're going to see is a major exit from that sector of real estate, especially in Victoria. So if you're looking for a bargain in the future, if you're prepared to invest in Victoria, and that's a dodgy proposition at the best of times at the moment, you might be able to pick up a bargain, because I think that there's going to be a major collapse. And this sort of legislation is just the type of thing that's going to do it. They're basically, Labor doesn't seem to want to support any private enterprise at the moment. They're going to basically undermine the real estate market by doing this, and which is already weak as anyway. I mean, look at because you don't have the international students in the Melbourne CBD. I know all about this because I actually live there, and that was bolstering the whole market there. That's gone, and on top of that, now they're extending this moratorium. I think it's a recipe for disaster. I got the impression that the Victorian Treasurer wasn't overly happy with what he had to present too. Just reading between the lines, he didn't look super enthusiastic about the crap he had to convey to the public. He probably knows that this is going to come back to bite Labor big time. The only thing that will save Labor is that Daniel Andrews will probably try to postpone and maybe eliminate elections if he possibly can. I'm sure he'd love to be another Xing Xiaoping and be a ruler for life, but he may not have that opportunity. And of course, this lockdown thing is having cruel consequences for patients. There was a heartbreaking story about a patient who had an immunity disease problem. He'd been in hospital for some time, going between normal ward and ICU, and he wasn't able to be with his mother when he died. And it was very tragic, and it's all because of corona restrictions and what have you. So there's definite dire consequences here. And there's another story about it was in the western suburbs. A 5-year-old child with her family was being questioned by police to make sure they were in the 5-kilometre range of where they live. I mean, this sort of regulation is just insane. And people will say it's good intentions keeping corona down. I don't believe that now. I really don't. I think it's all political now. And if you want to look for politics, you need to go no further than Queensland with Anastasia Palaszczuk, with the election coming up at the end of October. She wants to basically lock down Queensland because she thinks it's going to be in her interest politically. It's causing so much distress with patients again because they can't get to Brisbane Hospital even if they're up in northern New South Wales or much closer to Queensland. It might as well be a different country now, Queensland. It's been cut off from New South Wales in that respect. It's a disgrace. I mean, this is supposed to be Australia, not a number of individual states with premiers whose egos have gone through the roof. Well, Scott Morrison says he's going to try to get some sanity in this and open up the borders, but Scott Morrison hasn't been tough enough. If he really wanted to force their hand, he'd use the financial whip he has in hand. I mean, the federal government has lots of grant money they could withhold from Queensland if they wanted to, and the same could be said for Victoria. If he really wants to break down these barriers. I mean, I think ultimately we've got to really look seriously about possibly getting rid of states. I think long term that might be a very good strategy, because at the moment, problems are occurring with agricultural trade between borders. It's actually stuffing up the rural sector no end, so that's happening. Yet you'll have someone like Anastasia Palaszczuk. She's quite happy to boast about how she's got the AFL Grand Final, as if that's going to be the panacea for all ills in Queensland. I mean, it's obviously good for some people to have people come here, but the downside of that is there was actually a report of a skirmish outside, I think, nightclubs with a couple of players just yesterday. So they're not exactly acting well, these AFL players. So that's another thing that needs to be kept into account, and they may well be spreading coronavirus by not taking on the precautions. I mean, nothing surprises me these days. These people in positions of power abuse that power, and they treat average people like crap. And there seems to be a pattern forming, and it continues on. So look, I'm a little concerned. There is an article here that I've got from doctors, and these are not the medical experts, the chief medical officers who are basically in each state, who seem to be basically the second in command of each state now because of the pandemic. And these doctors are real doctors. They work full time as doctors. They're not bureaucrats / doctors like chief medical officers in each state. So they've got some interesting things to say. By the way, the name of the girl, the 5-year-old, was her name is Elise Hollis, and she was exercising in a local park in Footscray. Again, it seems as if Labor hate people in the working class areas, because Footscray, it's been gentrified to some degree, but it's still a sort of western suburbs of working class. But they were confronted by mask-wearing policemen while she's just playing in the park. So it's a sad thing that this is happening in Australia now. And I really feel sad for people in Victoria who aren't really Victorians now. I'd actually categorise them more as prisoners. They're basically inmates locked in penitentiary Victoria because they can't leave. And the other thing you may not be aware of, you can't go overseas either. This is quite extraordinary. Even New Zealand allows New Zealand citizens to travel overseas, assuming that the country they're going to will allow them to enter. But in Australia, no. Only a very select group of people are allowed to travel. I don't understand that. That is really draconian. I'd like Scott Morrison to clarify that one. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff happening at the moment, a lot of anti-libertarian stuff, and it's really concerning me that people don't seem to care about freedom anymore. I guess they're scared and they're worried about their economic situation. A scared and coward population is good for authoritarians. They can control them very easily. And that's just a fact of life. Now, this is the story about these doctors, and they talk a lot of sense in my opinion. So I'll just read this out. So bear with me. You can know I'm a blind bastard, so actually reading out can be a bit of a challenge for me. But anyway, doctors penned a desperate open letter to Dan Andrews, pleading with him not to extend state of emergency because it's putting Victorians' health at risk. Well, that ship has already sailed, unfortunately. 13 doctors have penned an open letter to Victorian Premier Daniel Andrews, the senior medical practitioners of various specialties all across Victoria. It was sent to the Premier's office on Monday with contributions from all doctors say extending the state of emergency is detrimental to Victorians. In the open letter, the doctors say extending the state of emergency could destroy Victorians' health and suggest an alternate method response be considered. The purpose of the letter is to make you aware that not all medical practitioners are in agreement with the Chief Medical Officer and the Victorian Government regarding the most effective way to control this disease, the letter begins. They are asking for the state of emergency to be lifted on September 13th. The state of emergency not be continued past September 13th when the agreement made for Parliament to be allowed to openly discuss and debate appropriate medical plans to manage the current COVID-19 crisis, the letter says. A panel of non-politically aligned medical and health-related experts be selected by a bipartisan parliamentary group to provide the transparent and active role of informing and advising government decisions and responses to the epidemic. Specialist referrals from GPs have fallen dramatically as people are scared they will catch the virus if they leave the house, the doctors said. Because of this, patients are getting poorer prognoses. The doctors note it is happening to people suffering with cancer. We now know that whilst COVID-19 is highly contagious, it is of limited virulence, the letter says. We're told that since March 2020, 565 Victorian patients have died either with or from the virus. This compares with annual Victorian deaths of approximately 10,000 patients with cardiovascular disease and 11,000 with cancer. Accordingly, COVID-19 deaths are a relatively small proportion of the 114 deaths per day that are normally seen in Victoria. In comparison, since the start of March, COVID-19 has been associated with 3 of 114 deaths per day. Most of the 565 deaths have occurred in nursing homes, which, according to doctors currently working in this environment, have described causal factors related not only to the virus but to other care-related issues, including isolation, loneliness, and related diminished nutritional intake. Box Hill Hospital urologist Dr. Jeff Wells is leading the push for the lift of restrictions and hopes the letter will make a difference. Well, sorry, Jeff, I'm afraid, in the state you're in, Victoria, that is not your personal state, you've got Buckley's hope, to use a good old Aussie term. When I see my patients and ask them how they're coping, the number one response is the sadness at not being able to see their grandchildren for 3, 4 or 5 months, he told Newswire. The mood of the population has changed dramatically in the past 2 weeks. There seems to be one half that is getting angrier and the other half which just lost all hope. These policies are affecting general psyche of the community. We just want to have significant input into this response instead of a blanket approach which is harming the general population. Well, I think that's very well said. I think these doctors are very sensible. I wish politicians would listen to people like that more. But of course, in Victoria, it's just not going to happen. There's a totally dysfunctional, autocratic government in control. And they have absolutely no idea of the economic consequences of their actions. The Victoria is going downhill. I've said it once, I'll say it again. Victoria's prognosis economically is dire right now, and it is going to be the sick man of Australia for some time. And I feel very sorry for anybody living down there. The only good thing is, I guess, the weather might improve a bit. That's normally what happens this time of year. That's about all you got to cling to, because you have got a shocking government there, and they won't allow you to... if you're a Black Lives Matter person, you'll be able to protest, but if you want to actually protest for freedom, that's an issue they're not interested in. That's a no-go area. Freedom, democracy, these are concepts that are alien to Daniel Andrews and his government. So I think it's a very sorry state of affairs. But look, I'll finish up right now. I think I've said enough. And look, as I say, I hope everybody looks after themselves. Still take precautions. I'm not saying be stupid. I'm on a high risk group when it comes to COVID. I'm not doing anything dumb. I'm trying to keep contact to a minimum. So I'm not saying do anything irresponsible, but I do believe that the people who are low risk should be given more freedom in our society so they can get the economy going again, and so we can recover from this nightmare faster than otherwise. But at the moment, I have very little hope, because unfortunately I don't think Scott Morrison's strong enough to push these recalcitrant premiers into line. Of course, please subscribe, thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs wherever you like. Oh no, I better not say that. You might be too creative on that one. And yeah, comment, please, comment. Even I've had some interesting comments. Some I can't answer because I don't understand what they're saying. So that happens. You get all sorts, but nothing particularly abusive, thank God. But yeah, okay, contribute if you can. That would be nice. Bye.